Hi, Mr. Minnick, with help for students in my honors software design class. Understand how this tic-tac-toe demo program works. It's currently in 2017-18 in the Unit 5 area of our course. I currently have it posted at GitHub, and the name of it, awkward name there, Android TTT CustomView. And it has 3 classes as part of that project. And you should watch any other available videos explaining the other tic-tac-toe related projects that only have 1 class. And they each generate programmatically, they generate their own interface. They don't use XML files. They use the onDraw method to create the board on the fly. Well, we'll see that same thing here in this project. It would make sense as soon as we trace the code to handle the display of the board in the class called board. And in a second, we're going to see how the main activity then drives that, makes it happen, controls the logic. And the real logic of whether the game is over or not is in the game state class. This is kind of like perhaps, let's see, MVC, Model View Controller. This would definitely be, well, I don't want to blur semantics here. Anyway, let's proceed to review this code. Okay, so here we are. This is the runtime experience about to pop up. When I run this app on the emulator at least, we're going to see that, well, there's work left to be done for an assignment here in this school year. But in my emulator that I'll soon see, notice it takes up the whole screen. That's an improvement on a recent demo program that only took up the teeny tiny top left corner. Anyway, apparently it's player X's turn, so I'm going to click there, and an X is drawn. Now I'm clicking, but I would be touching the screen of the device if I had an actual phone in my hand. And it automatically knows that it's player O's turn, and let's say O wants to go right here. Now, right now, I have it showing me some output as to where on the screen the finger was touched the screen, rather. Okay, we were using Toast, I think, to do that. Let's go look at the logic of the code and trace it. So first of all, realize that the project consists of 3 classes. And main activity, whoops, I just closed it by accident, double click, main activity, board, and game state. So let's go into main activity. That's where everything kicks off. We have a heck of a lot of imports. I have no idea what I just did there. And in this class, sorry about that, I accidentally double clicked. In this class, main activity, we have a bunch of class variables. A view, a board object, a game state object, and a little primitive int variable square width. And we have the following methods, pretty simple, follows from demonstration programs in this school year. We have an onCreate method and an actual inner class that actually has a bunch of methods in it, a constructor, and onDraw and onTouch event. Okay, so initially when this main activity launches, it creates programmatically, again, without referring to an XML file in the resources of this project, it creates a tic-tac-toe board view object and sets that to be the interface that the user will first see on their device. And then it initially gets displayed. So this inner class has a constructor And the constructor here brings in a context. We call the parent class constructor, and that just does stuff that has to be done. And then I'm choosing to instantiate two different objects, a board object and a game state object. And moving on then, after that first constructor of that inner class, and then the screen draws the very first time initially. So the screen draws, I have a variable that keeps track of the view's width. I have a paint object that I use to throw in some colors and to draw some text. I'm going to be using the color green. And I have another paint object that's going to focus on some other text. I'm not sure if I even use this paint object for text. I'm not sure if that line of code is necessary or not. I'll have to look into that later. But I do some fancy stuff here that controls the font and makes it look good. And I have a little local variable called message that we'll have to see why that's being used later. I keep track of some things, my left and top edges of something. I divide the screen's width by 3. I draw some lines. That's probably the tic-tac-toe board. Sorry about that. That's probably the tic-tac-toe board. Yep, according to the comments over here that you might be able to see. I'm throwing in some handy mathematics to make it look decent. And then, like a previous demo program, I have a bunch of if-else-ifs that pretty much just manually check to see if the board in its top left corner, position 0, 0, has a player 1's lowercase x or not. Now, if it does have an x there, equals x, then I draw 2 lines, which I probably make an x. If it's equal to a 0 that's being stored behind the scenes, then I do some draw circle action. And in a previous demo program, we used a local 2-dimensional array to keep track of whether there were X's and O's in the 9 positions of the tic-tac-toe board. But here we have a whole class whose job it is to be the board, to be that part of the interface. So with a bunch of if-else-ifs, it's your job, of course, to add as many as necessary. You probably need 9 total, since there are 9 squares, to draw X's and O's depending on whether currently there's an X or an O in each given location of the board. Then I do game detection. So every time the screen is refreshed, every time onDraw is called, in other words, every time that invalidate, in this case, invalidate in a previous program, but look, canvas.restore, I think, is what causes this to redraw itself and therefore execute this code. So we're constantly checking to see if there's a win or not. And I have a method called isWinner in the game. Let's see, game. What type of variable is game? Game is a game state reference. So apparently there's an isWinner method and there's an isDraw method found in the game class. And I'm just checking to see if there's a win or not. And then I throw in a nice little message. And how does that message get displayed? Oh, right here. I use some fancy static layout class to take the message that I want to communicate to the user as far as how many people, how many wins there have been, whose turn it is. And I just throw that message in with some kind of layout using a static layout object. And I save my canvas. I translate it because I drew it in one place, but then I put it in another place on the actual screen. And you can look this up or see me for help. or Google it. And then I restore the canvas to essentially, I think, refresh the screen. So that's it. That's what happens in the onDraw method. Now, every once in a while, somebody actually plays your tic-tac-toe board instead of just looking at it. So they touch one of the 9 squares, and the touch event, onTouch event method, is passed information that about the user's interaction, about the touch. And if it's a touch up, so as soon as they let their finger off the screen, and if I check a method called game running. Is game running? Is it true or false? If it's true, if the game is running and the person just touched or action upped, I get the XY coordinate of their touch through that event. I then throw some toast on the screen to tell everybody who happens to be looking at the screen whose turn it is. And I throw in some diagnostic information that I eventually will delete probably as to where on the screen X and Y position-wise it was touched. I needed that because I needed to figure out where they were touching, so I knew which of the 9 positions on the tic-tac-toe board were being logically touched or not. I would eventually take this kind of thing out of the program. And then with this if and the nested if-else inside of it, I'm checking to see if the user's touch was in the top left corner in this case, and if that position is currently empty or not, because I don't want cheaters to change like an X to an O or vice versa. So if all that's true, then if it's player turn X's turn, then I update the logic of the board behind the scenes. Now notice it hasn't refreshed yet, but I'm just storing the letter X in the right part of this board object. And I do all of this for all 9 squares based on the player that just touched the screen. And apparently in the game state class, I have a method toggle player turn that switches it back and forth. And here's the real refresh. This invalidate calls the onDraw method and causes the board then to update with this new information. Wow, so very similar to a previous demo program, but slightly different because this involves a couple of extra classes that uses better software development. The board class and the game state class. Hey, let's go take a look at them right now. Here's the board class. It's got a couple constants, final constants. I guess we could easily upgrade this program so that instead of tic-tac-toe on a classic 3x3 board, we can play like 5x5, perhaps. I'm still using a 2-dimensional array, but it's buried inside this class, and it's not over in the MainActivity class like a previous demo program. And in the constructor for this class board, I instantiate the 2-dimensional array of strings to the correct size, 3x3. And with a double nested for loop, I throw empty strings in each of the 9 positions of the 2D array. I have a accessor method for actually getting the board, so that whole board, the 2-dimensional array, is returned as an object. I probably make use of that when I display it somewhere else. I have a get position method and a set position method to update or retrieve the status of the board. Okay, that's pretty lean and simple there, the board class. And let's take a look at the game state class. So the status of the game is either running or not. I start the game off so it's running. But if there's a win, let's say we check to see if a winner, then we set game running equal to false. Notice that it's private, game running is private, but I do have an accessor method called game running. that returns that true or false. And I have a variable that keeps track of which player's turn it is, and then a way of retrieving that information, get player turn. And a way to change player's turn, we already discussed, and I check for a draw separately from checking for a winner. And very interesting way of doing it. Trace that code, logically make sure that it actually does work. Maybe there's stuff left for you to do if you turn this into a working tic-tac-toe program. Okay, check out the code on GitHub, at least as of right now, January 2018. Okay, I'm going to run the program one more time, and we'll see what it does. It's certainly not complete, but it's a starting point if you would like to finish this tic-tac-toe, or you have to because it's an assignment. Okay, here's my emulator popping up. And right now I know it detects the touch event in this upper left corner. And see, if I click down here, nothing happens. No X's. Well, the toast pops up. But nothing happens here. So I'm going to click as if I touched an Android tablet in its upper left corner here. Ready? Click. Okay, it drew, it did 2 draw lines. And invalidate caused the screen to refresh. In the 0, 0 position of the 2-dimensional array that's in the board class, I currently have a lowercase x, I believe. And now it's player O's turn. So if O clicks here, click, the screen redraws with an O in position row 1, well, row 0 technically, and then column 1, 0, 1. And right now it did a check for a win and a check for a draw, and right now there is no win and there's no draw, so the game's continuing, and hopefully you'll get this program finished on time if it is an assignment. Good luck, and have a good day. See me if you have any questions.